Welcome to Tech About Town. I'm one of your hosts, Alex Kinsella.
I'm Sasha Bell.
Today we've got an episode that's going to challenge your conceptions of quantum information and computing and all things quantum.
Physics.
Physics.
The laws of physics.
Children's books. We have Dr. Paul Terry and Jessica Hodgson from Photonic out in Vancouver, British Columbia, all the way here. They were in town for a Communitech Breakfast event.
Can I tell you a little bit about what a Communitech Breakfast event is?
You definitely may.
Okay, so Communitech is an innovation hub in Waterloo region. We've been around for over 26 years, and we help tech entrepreneurs start, grow, and succeed. We help with talent, access to market, capital, community. That's my spiel. That's my stick. I'm going to leave it there. We throw these breakfast events almost monthly where we bring really interesting keynote speakers to just do like a sort of casual fireside chat. We cater it with a really great breakfast, good coffee, really mugs that are large and not small mugs, so you don't have to keep on refilling your coffee. And we host really interesting speakers. So today we had Dr. Paul Terry and Jesse come in from Photonic and participate as our speakers for the breakfast. And then we threw them in the podcast room and asked them some questions about quantum so we could have a great episode.
Yeah, let's get to the conversation.
Kick us off, Alex. I'm just here. I'm the personality hire of this organization, so I'm just here to add some jokes. I don't
work here.
Okay. Keep going. Yeah.
All right. So thanks for joining us today. We are recording this right after a Communitech Breakfast event where you both spoke about a number of topics. We have 30 minutes. We can go through a whole bunch, but the one that really kind of jumped out at me was the conversation around talent. And, you made a comment around, one of the greatest untapped resources in Canada is our quantum talent. Your kind of anecdote about there's only 10 people in the world who could do this specific role. I find there's a lot of that stuff doesn't jive, right? Because we talk about quantum talent in Canada, but then we have a lack of quantum talent in Canada. We were earlier talking about kids, and so 6 and 4, and I forget how old your kids are.
1.5 and 3.5.
Yeah, and you're in your 20s. Your kids probably know a lot about quantum, more than the average 20-year-old. 2 of my kids have no idea. And then one watches Star Trek and I think has some idea, but it's also science fiction quantum and therefore not real. So how do we, beyond university and post-secondary, what can we be doing at an earlier age to start doing this? Because if quantum computers will be a scalable reality in 10 years, whatever.
What's a Sesame Street for quantum computing for children?
Why is there no Sesame Street episode about where Elmo gets to learn about superposition?
Good question. So, a couple of thoughts. One is that in a company, it takes a lot of different people. You don't have to be a top quantum physicist to be in a company. So we have 140 people in Photonic currently. We have people with degrees in English, degrees in history. We have a very wide variety of people. So when we look at a company, and this is my 7th company that we've engineered, so we're engineering this company. What you do is look at team, technology, and traction. The most important one is team. And so people confuse team with the technology. The team is really important. And so you need a wide variety of people to make a company successful, not just quantum people. That's the first thought. Second one is when we hire people, one of the key issues is, can you, one, listen well to others? And secondly, can you communicate to others? So if you can communicate, then anything that you know, by definition, you can actually communicate to others. And so we have active programs where people in all disciplines, not just quantum to business people, but business people to quantum, will communicate what it is to be in a high-tech company moving fast and furious through all of this. So the kind of so-called learning organization, if you like, the idea that the organization learns and grows like kids do is a very important concept. Having said that, there are some very specific disciplines that you have to have. I mean, you don't want, if you're having a heart transplant, you don't want somebody who does foot work to do your heart transplant. You need very specific people. In Canada about 20 years ago now, I think, I spent a lot of money University of Waterloo and so forth, educating a generation of people in the world of quantum, which is fantastic because we're now seeing the rewards of that. 80% or so of our staff are between the ages of 25 and 35. Quantum is a young person's sport. And so anybody in that age group who's done physics has gone through a quantum course at university. Quantum information theory is taught now as a second-year course in most universities. So having that history of quantum coming through is very good for us. Having said that, there's probably only 4,000 or less people in the world that will understand enough about quantum to basically be the workforce of the future, and they're spread around 100 companies. So it's a very small but diverse group of people. I'm old enough to remember the birth of IP networking. When in IP networking, the same thing happened. Only 4,000 people in the world understand IP networking. Now, there's probably hundreds of thousands of people in the world that are in the world of IP networking. So we still have a long way to go. And given that this is a technology that will redefine the 21st century, anything that we do to get quantum, either the physics of it or quantum the maths of it or quantum the so what of it into the schools for 16-year-olds plus, getting people writing quantum applications, however simple they are at 16 plus, and getting people educated and removing the mysticism that the physicists have surrounded quantum with. It's not a mysterious thing. It's just it's something that's just not very obvious to people, is a big move forward, and Canada has probably the lead of this in the world at this point in time.
Jessie, I'd love to hear your thoughts too.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we spend lots of time thinking about on our team. Is we have lots of other people that we need other than quantum physicists, and so, like I said in the talk this morning, taking those quantum physicists and turning them into business people, leaders, in an organization and members of our community, that's one side of it. But then educating those other professionals on quantum to varying degrees and to make them successful in the organization, it's a problem that needs to be solved. I think there's lots of people thinking about the problem, lots of opportunities in the marketplace for those programs to be developed, and we're developing stuff internally too. So we're working on this Quantum 101 resource that is going to be a part of our standard onboarding. Part of that actually is a quantum physics and quantum computing for babies board book. So
I need that.
It exists
for me.
I bought it for my own kids, and their eyes kind of glazed over, but it exists. It's really cool, and kind of compiling resources that talk about quantum in a way that isn't mystical and it isn't mysterious, and it makes it a little bit more real to make sure that people can contribute and participate in the conversations that they need to in boardrooms.
Yeah, you never know who, it doesn't glaze everyone's eyes over. There's some kids who are going to...
The hungry caterpillar is hungry and full at the same time. And there's your... depending on if you've seen him eating everything or if he's done eating.
I don't get that joke, Alex.
Do you know how many times I've actually told that story to my kids?
The hungry caterpillar?
Oh, yeah.
It's still a hit. Mine is covered. Mine is
I thought that was a
held
good
together in tape.
joke.
I don't listen to me. I don't understand quantum. So I don't understand the joke.
Well, that's kind of another point, which is you talked about like this mysteriousness or this kind of this veil around quantum. There's a lot of also hype around quantum.
Oh yeah.
And I think a lot of times when people they'll hear quantum computing, but there's quantum communication and quantum information science.
Right.
I made a weird reference to like gravity not existing to a quantum physicist once, because it was a story about like, is gravity a force or is it like the after effect of another force? And there's a whole bunch of research around how gravity affects qubits and everything. Yeah, you would know. This is your job. I feel like I could get through a cocktail party bullshitting my way through this.
That's great. I could not.
I just keep it all here.
That's
just
great.
Random
Science
shit.
was my worst subject in school.
It was mine too. But so how do we cut through that hype and start explaining? Because if I say to my kids, hey, you're in high school, there's a great quantum program at UW or wherever, but they don't really have a concrete idea of how quantum will be applied in their life. So when we say it's the revolution of the 21st century, in what way?
Right. So first thing to say is quantum is 100 years old. It's not a new technology. I think the Stern and Gerlach experiment was in 1923, I think.
Should I ask what that was? Or
this was an experiment to say an electron has a property called spin.
Okay.
And so the electrons technically spin. And oddly, they only spin to the left or to the right. Right? They don't spin up and down. They just spin. And that spin is either on or off. It's either left or right, essentially. And so this rocked physics in 1923, right? Because they demonstrated that whatever we think of, this is actually what happens. And so this is the first thing to know, is that the quantum is the reality that we live in. So quantum defines how physics works. And in fact, it's the only theory that has now encompassed every other theory of physics except for gravity. And people are working on gravity now. So quantum is the way the world works. Now, the problem is that we don't see it every day. We don't, so it's not something that we really observe every day in our day-to-day lives. Now, there are three properties of quantum, just to keep it really simple, that are important. The first one is something called quantum tunneling. So quantum tunneling is this idea that electrons can move across what's called a potential barrier, whatever that is, whatever that means. This is the basis of a transistor. So every transistor operates using this thing called quantum tunneling. So the transistor, which was actually patented in Canada in 1925, I think, or so, and was initially used as a hearing aid in 1947 by Bell Labs, then became an amplifier. Then people operated it backwards and then used tunneling to make a switch, and that switch turned into the modern microprocessor. And so the transistor, the quantum tunneling of a transistor, is how every processor works. So every iPhone, every washing machine that has a computer in it is using quantum tunneling today. And people don't think about it. It's like driving your car. You don't know how the engine works, but it does. It takes you down the road. So we've had quantum tunneling for a very long time. Now, interestingly, this idea of spin, the fact that a particle can spin, has been used for a very long time. Anybody who's had an MRI, the way an MRI machine works is the protons in the water molecules of your body are caused to spin. They put a magnetic field on it, which causes them to move. You can image that and then get a cross-section of your body. That's how it works. So an MRI machine is a quantum sensor. That's what it is.
I did not know that. I've had an MRI before.
Yeah. So if you've had an MRI, you have been inside of a quantum computer.
That is so cool.
If you think about what that is.
But I was going to say, like, I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes up in the general public, is we say a quantum computer and someone's like, oh, I'm just going to get a Dell. And instead of like, whatever Intel processor, I'm going to get something else. And it's not that.
It's not that.
There are already so many daily applications for quantum is what I'm hearing. Yeah. And people just don't, it would just not be common knowledge. Like I didn't know that. And
Yeah, so quantum sensors, for example, you could think of an MRI machine as one of the first ever quantum sensors. And so there's a quantum machine in every hospital in North America, give or take, right? So it's not new. So this idea that quantum is brand new is a false idea. Quantum sensors, such as magnetometers to replace compasses in airplanes and ships and things, that's coming. So this is good. Now, there are two properties I haven't mentioned of quantum, which will define the next 100 years of computing.
Okay.
The first one is this idea of superposition, whatever that means. And the second one is the idea of entanglement, which is arguably the most powerful of those two ideas. Transistors don't do this. They don't have superposition, and they don't have entanglement. The idea of superposition is an idea that when you put a quantum bit, which is a physical object, so first of all, a qubit is a physical object. You can make them out of all sorts of things. People make them out of Josephson junctions, ion traps, photons, the alignment of photons, the polarization of photons. You can use all of these things that have quantum properties, but eventually what you get is a single object that has a quantum property. That property is one of superposition and oddly entanglement. So the superposition is the idea that that you're used to putting a 1 or a 0 into a memory. If you have a memory bit on a computer, it's either a 1 or a 0. In superposition, you can actually put a quantum bit into a state that is not a 1 or a 0. It's some combination of a 1 or a 0. Okay, and it's called superposition. Okay, so an analogy, which is a very all the physicists will hate me for the analogy, but if you take a coin which has heads or tails, when you flip it and it's spinning, is it heads or is it tails?
I don't know the answer. Is this a pop quiz?
Yeah. No. Serious question. How would you describe that coin?
It's in motion.
It's in motion, and you could argue it's both heads and tails. It's heads or tails.
It's neither.
It's neither.
It
can be neither or both. This is the mysticism, but it's just a coin spinning in the air. Okay, and this is how quantum bits work. When you put them into a state, they're basically their 1 or 0 state is undetermined at this point. When it lands, it'll be a 1 or a 0. It'll be heads or tails. Now, a quantum computer, what it will do is it will put a magnetic field on that coin and cause it to land 1 more often than it lands 0. Right. So what you can do is you can influence the outcome of that spinning coin by the use of a magnetic field, let's say. Okay, so that's an idea. Another idea is I spin another coin and that's spinning. So I have 2 coins now spinning and they're independent coins. And so one will not affect the other. So imagine you're in Las Vegas and you're spinning these coins and you're betting on the outcome. So normally you would bet on 50-50, right, give or take, on both of them independently. Well, imagine a casino boss who knows about quantum puts a magnetic field on these coins and influences the output so that one will be 60% of the time heads and 40% of the time tails and makes money on that. Imagine that, right? Imagine also this thing called entanglement. Entanglement is when these coins are moving, then you can create a relationship between them where one influences the other.
Oh.
Okay? Without a physical connection. Oddly. They're not connected in any way, but one will influence the other. So the outcome of one, if one lands heads, the other one could land tails, right? So they will actually influence each other. That's called entanglement. So this word entanglement is the idea that 2 quantum bits can exist and they can be made to be related to each other independent of distance. And Einstein had a real problem with this, right? Einstein hated this with a passion. And so
Why did he hate it?
Because so I can have a qubit in England and a qubit in Canada.
Yeah.
I can entangle them. We'll talk about how you do that in a minute.
Uh-oh.
But as one moves, the other one moves instantaneously. So it appears to violate the theory of special relativity. It appears to violate the idea that something can move faster than the speed of light.
Oh.
Okay? And so we are very used to, in daily life, associating the interaction of things with distance. So I can interact with this cup on the table because I'm quite close to it. The idea I could have a cup here and a cup in France. And if I knock that one over, the one in France falls over.
It's like challenging our human, concept of movement and
locality.
Space. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So in quantum mechanics, you can actually have 2 objects separated by a universe, both of which can change.
So maybe we can talk to aliens with like
I wouldn't go that far. But this entanglement thing is an incredibly powerful idea where you can entangle 2 things together so they actually become, technically in physics, they become the same object. So whatever you do to one happens to the other and they become entangled. Now it turns out that if you give a computer scientist the idea that one, I can put a qubit in a state of superposition, I can influence its outcome before it gives me the outcome, right? By modulating a magnetic field. That means I have a bit that's not just a 1 and a 0. I have a bit that I can change. And I can combine 2 qubits together. So the influence of one influences the output of the other. I can now create a gate, a logical gate.
Whoa, wait a second.
Okay, so we'll go back to that. So in modern computing, there are 3 gates: an AND gate, an OR gate, and a NOT gate. So every computer is made up of those 3 gates. Every computer. So and you use transistors to make gates, you make gates to make computers. So the gate, when I was at school, the gate is what we learned to do, and every hardware engineer in the world put circuits together with these gates to actually put some inputs in, modify them, and get some outputs out, which is what a computer does. We have the same concept in quantum computing. We have what's called universal quantum gates, where I can take a qubit, I can feed them into gates, I can manipulate them, and I get an output. So that's what a quantum computer is. So the model of the metaphor is very strong. The difference here, those gates don't have to be in the same country with each other. And they will instantaneously sort of use entanglement and superposition to compute and get answers out.
This is blowing my mind. The things I'm thinking of is a computer that spans the entire world.
Yeah, that's true.
Is that kind of what you're getting at a little bit?
That's right. And last week, so the Nobel Prize for Physics was awarded in 2022 for the idea that I can take two qubits that have never met each other.
Yeah.
I can get them to interact via them issuing photons, basically sending light. Mm-hmm. If they send light to a mirror, and the light lands at the same time on that mirror, the photons interact with each other. They make quantum love, as it were. They interact. They become entangled, and they transfer their entanglement instantaneously back to the qubits they left behind, and then you can lose the photons. So the fact that the Nobel Prize for Physics was awarded in 2022, they tend to award Nobel Prizes for things that are fundamental physics breakthroughs that will change society. So now we can have two qubits that never meet each other, never in the same country. You can have one in space, actually. You can have one on the moon and one on whatever.
To talk to the aliens.
As long as they can actually sort of land a photon in the same mirror at the same time, they become entangled, which means that when you have thousands of these things entangled, you can run a quantum program with superposition on a sea of entangled quantum bits and get results out of them. So truly, your quantum bits become distributed and universal.
So the question that I kind of come back to with a lot of this is, I've heard it's 5 years away for the last 15 years of things, right? All encryption is going to be broken.
Yes.
Right. Realistically, right, from your position, how are we actually getting closer to this type of quantum computer that is like a functional, could be used by good actors and bad actors?
Yeah. So I think it's true that, first of all, making qubits is hard. Right? There's no two ways about it. The mathematics of quantum was very well known in the 80s and the 90s and up to 2000. So all the mathematics, and in fact, you can go to a website and see all the algorithms for a quantum computer actually online already. Right? So people figured that out from a theoretical physics point of view. And in about 2000, what happened was the theoretical physicists challenged the practical physicist, go make me a quantum bit that does this. Make me a qubit. And they went, okay, how am I going to make that? And so they then sort of literally went into their virtual garages and started making these qubits out of physical objects to make these things. Fast forward to 2018, and Google, I think it was 2018, they made 54 qubits, and they're so hard to make, and they're so unstable. You basically, like the early jet engines, sort of, you kind of get them going, and then they don't last for very long, and then they all fall over. And so they made 54 qubits in 2018. When I met Steph Simmons, the founder of Photonic, what I was taken by is the fact that she had solved the idea of making a qubit in silicon. And remember, we as a humanity, our biggest machines are in silicon. We can put 53 billion transistors on a chip today, right? With no errors for $300. Imagine that, right? So that's how a modern microprocessor works. So by making a qubit in silicon that's manufacturable, identical, scalable.
Yeah, mass producible.
The idea that making a qubit now is hard kind of went away. And so then the question was, so that brought us back from the 10 years going, we can make these things at scale, which is good, and make them at a cost point, which is good. Second thing is that this idea that I can get the qubits to interact photonically using light. So we can actually take a qubit from one chip, and we actually announced this last week, from a qubit from one chip and a qubit from another chip, and then get the light to interact so you can entangle them across chips, across cryostats, across countries, means that you have now the three things that you need to make a computer. You have compute, you have communications, and you have memory. Because in the qubit, we can store the stuff in the center of the qubit. Okay, so now we have the building blocks, we have the recipes to do it. So now I can put my hand on my heart and say it's just a matter of time now. It's a matter of engineering to actually sort of make this thing happen. The analogy I would give you is Frank Whittle invented the jet engine in the 40s, I think it was. And, the making the jet engine was really hard to do. But, to make it work, you've got to bolt it onto an airplane and then send the airplane. So we're in this situation where we've got the jet engine and we're working on bolting it to the airplane to do 400 knots in the airplane. It's not about the jet engine for us. Not saying you can't constantly improve the jet engine. Of course you can, and you do. But it's bolting it onto the airplane. So it's no longer. It's absolutely no longer than 10 years away. It's probably 5 years or less. That we'll have a functional quantum computer that will actually run real algorithms to solve real problems.
So this is going to change your role, right, for hiring, because as this technology becomes scalable and more ubiquitous, do you kind of see that, the idea that business people should have some quantum knowledge, quantum people should have some business knowledge, and so on? Kind of like what's your big challenge then within that kind of education? Because I think of it like you made the analogy of like, you get in your car every day, you don't necessarily know how it works. But what do you start to look for then as you look at this pipeline of talent that you're going to need to help build? What are those kind of skill sets and quantum and non-quantum that you're looking for?
I mean, right now, 85% of our organization is based in research and development, is like building the jet engine and figuring out how to strap it to the plane. So we will need to build out an entire go-to-market side of the business at some point. We'll need to figure out, when we scale, we'll have to have an organization that matches that scale. I think the skill sets will become less specific, but we will have to figure out how to educate people on quantum if we're getting them from other industries. So right. I'm not a quantum person, and I've spent the last 10 years of my career in largely software as a service. And so I'm used to sitting down with the product team for 2 hours and being like, "Hey, tell me how it works. What's the software stack? Who does what? Okay, it comes in here, it goes out there. Great, got it." And I'm 5 months deep in my role, and I'm still, having a time figuring out what we're producing and who does what and what their skill set is. It's hard. So how can I expedite that learning process as fast as possible when I'm bringing, say, a sales leader from another organization that has an amazing skill set figuring out how to scale sales, but doesn't necessarily know quantum, and how do I get them as smart as possible and not as fast as possible?
And that's a challenge such a challenge for almost any tech company, right? Like your dev team is being supported by folks like me. Like I'm a creative director. I make videos. I manage graphic design. I manage brand. I manage a podcast. We're not a tech company. We're a nonprofit that supports tech companies. But I've also worked at tech companies, and it's a challenge. You have to wrap your mind around it enough to be able to support it properly.
Yeah. So take that. Yeah, a tech example or a tech company, and then go probably as deep tech as you can get,
yes.
right? This is like, we're literally making the computer. I can go see the computer in the lab in our first floor of our building. It's so complex. And
so
the interfaces between the hardware team, the software team, the quantum teams, it just is a level of complexity like I've never encountered. So figuring out how we replicate that experience or even make it even faster for people that science wasn't their best subject, but they want to make a difference and make an impact.
And they're up for the challenge.
Yeah. And replicating and continuing the culture, because we have all of these people with deep expertise in all these different areas. And as Paul was saying, the ability to communicate and share ideas and be open to listening and hearing other people's ideas, we would sink if people weren't willing to share their expertise and listen to other people's expertise. So how do we maintain that culture as we scale?
And build trust, right?
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
I trust you or sales leader to know that you sales, and
Yes.
sales has to trust your tech team. That trust is such a huge part in any successful organization as well.
I think that this is a people sport. So we can talk about technology all day, but it's actually a people sport. All companies are about people. So we actually, every time somebody comes into the company, when we onboard them, we have three kind of missions, if you like, or three values that we ask people. The first one is fearless ambition. Be ambitious, be fearless, right? Nobody in this company is going to give you a hard time for having a go at it and swinging and missing. Just be fearlessly ambitious. The second one is have respect for everybody. I always tell people coming in the company, there are people in this company that have degrees in English, degrees in history, degrees in theoretical physics. I don't care. I care that we are one company, and everybody has earned their place in the company. And so although we may disagree or we may have lively debate, have respect for everybody. Mm-hmm. That's really important. And the third one, and I'm often asked, out of the 6 companies I've done before, what is one of the things that is mostly a belief or a value that you have? And the third one is enjoy the journey, right? There's always drama in a company. There's always dramatic moments. Don't take it too seriously. Don't take it too literally. Put a big capacitor in the way. The highs are always too high. The lows are always too low. Smooth it out. You're surrounded by people like you who want to do this. And we weed people out, actually. Jesse does a fabulous job of making sure that we don't have the egos that you can get in this coming into the company, that people make other people successful. And that is much more important than technology, actually, in any company that you build, just as a general point.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And if people want to learn about careers at Photonics, how would they go about that?
I would go to photonic.com and click on our careers page. All of our open roles are listed, and we do have open requisitions that are just if you want to share your expertise with us, you can drop your application there. So you can check us out there.
Jessie Hodgson, head of people at Photonic. Dr. Paul Terry, CEO of Photonic. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That was a great conversation. There's a lot of hype around quantum. I feel like I understand more now to have a conversation at a cocktail party after a quantum event.
I think it's tough with burgeoning technology that really no one can predict what it's going to become and how it's going to affect our day to day, much like AI. But you can't predict how it's going to affect us. You can't predict the benefits and the negative implications. It's just an exciting time for innovation.
The big thing is, and the thing about an MRI being a quantum sensor and quantum tunneling is what transistors do. So it's not just the technology, it's quantum research is understanding how these things we already have work. Like magnets. How do they work? That's an ICP reference. You get that? Meme?
ICP?
Insane Clown Posse.
Oh, no. I know what Insane Clown Posse is, but I don't know that meme.
Magnets? Oh.
No. Is that a whole underbelly of the meme world?
I encourage you to go down a rabbit hole.
I don't want to do that.
After we're done here. But listen, thanks for listening. We'll be back with another episode very soon.
We don't know when that is because we are flying by the seat of our pants with this podcast
they're
schedule.
Consistently aired. I just don't know.
We don't know who's going to be the next one.
Yeah. I have an idea. But as always, if you have feedback on this episode or topics, you can address it to Sasha. No, you can reach us on social media anywhere at Communitech on any of the platforms, all of them.
Yeah. And if you have any questions, if you're yourself a tech founder and you want some support in Waterloo Tech Toronto corridor, you can slide right over to communitech.ca. Or if you're a partner, if you're a large organization, or if you're a small organization, actually any organization that wants to plug into the tech community in Waterloo region, you can slide over to communitech.ca/partners.
So we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, we're going to go skedaddle. Going to get out of here.